Welcome to Cash Flow Podcasting, where business owners reveal how their podcasts have supercharged their success. My podcast completely transformed my training business, so I've seen firsthand the magic that podcasts can work. And here's the best part. You don't need millions of downloads to boost your business's revenue and impact. Let our guests show you how. Caleb, welcome.
Hey, great to be here.
Well, I'm so excited to dig into your wisdom and perspectives. I've been enjoying playing around with your website, but could you introduce yourself and your business? What are you all about?
Yeah, so Caleb Brown, New Planner Recruiting. So we have a recruiting firm that helps registered investment advisory firms, so independent financial advisory firms all across the nation hire entry level. And what we mean by that is somebody that's got probably 10 years or less in the business that could be making anywhere from $50,000 out of college to maybe $150,000 a year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the business is you provide sort of headhunting or recruiting services, not so much for the executive search kind of a level, but rather the more junior financial planner folks to these firms.
That's right. So paraplanner position, associate planner, and then lead financial planner. So some headhunting, some marketing, some project management, some business coaching and practice management consultant, all sort of wrapped into one engagement with us. So for some firms, that's overkill because all they want's a name and a phone number. But for a lot of my clients that we recruit for, which tend to be smaller RIAs, and when I say smaller, I'm just going to call it less than $1 billion in assets, they need all this stuff. Sometimes they've hired before, other times they haven't. So we really get in there on a consultative, collaborative type approach versus a transactional, which is normally associated with a recruiting engagement.
I hear you. Here's your person, and we're done.
That's right.
And as I listen to your podcast, that really comes through in terms of they're thinking about who do you need, how many people, and what's your budget? And then you just sort of say, hey, that's actually kind of low now. Be careful, And then you just give them, it's kind of beautiful to hear. You give them sort of like the tough love with regard to there may be some instances, well, we can't pay them more than, our other guys are getting paid. It's like, well, actually, your other guys are also currently being underpaid. So watch out. You might lose them too and have a bigger problem on your hands.
That's right. Yeah, a lot of tough love on both sides. So the job seeker and also the hiring firm, when they're kind of shooting from the moon and want, what I call the Simone Biles candidate, and they don't want to pay the Simone Biles prices. It doesn't work out too well.
Not only does she have to be great with asset allocation, I need some backflip capabilities and tremendous flexibility and all of those pieces. Okay, understood. So then your key revenue stream is you're providing recruiting like plus. Is that kind of like one service offering, or how do you think about it in terms of revenue streams or offers?
Yeah, we charge a flat fee. So most recruiters charge a percentage of salary, but that's a little bit of a conflict of interest, right? To only send the more highly paid person. So we charge a flat fee, like I said, consultative, collaborative. So if I go to the client and say, look, I know you set the budget at this, but I found this really good candidate. It's going to take this much more to get them. They can still say yes or no, but they're going to know that I'm not getting anything else out of that. So that's our primary revenue is the recruiting fees. But then we have other stuff too. We have sometimes clients will find their own candidates. They've either done their own search or gotten a referral and just said, look, Caleb, we don't really need you to manage the hiring process like a lot of the clients do, or find us people. We found our own person, but we love your proprietary multi-stage screening process that you run these people through. And the fact that you've been in the business, you are a CFP, you know what the job takes. We feel really good about your testing and your analysis on whether this person can succeed in the role or not. So we have another revenue source where clients can pay just a per candidate basis to have us screen them.
Okay, cool. So that's the business, New Planner Recruiting, what you're doing, how money emerges. So can you take us back in time? When did you think, maybe a podcast would be a smart thing to add into this business?
It's a funny story, Pete, because I was actually anti-podcast for a number of years. A lot of my buddies were starting them, and I don't listen to a lot of them, so maybe I'm just a curmudgeon. But I just thought that the space was just really crowded, and I was even trying to look like, what's next? What's going to be the next big thing? Because it's a big thing. And then I tell you, just like a lot of things, and you've probably heard this before, then COVID happened, and I found myself with a lot of time and not traveling around all these conferences and visiting schools and doing a lot of these things that I normally do as part of my job as CEO of New Planner Recruiting. And I know my business partner and buddy, Michael Kitsis, had a lot of success with his Financial Advisor Success podcast. And then Alan Moore with the XYPN Radio. And so I just started thinking about it. And I was like, there's not really anybody doing anything for the new planners. All of the content out there is for the business owner or the highly experienced person, the person that's spending the money, paying for, the advertisers want to go after. So I said, look, it's a little bit of a blue ocean. And I needed a way too to try to get in front of more candidates too. So I really came up with this to try to get in front of, to build my candidate pipeline. Now, the interesting thing, it has done that and we've had great results. But it's also gotten me more clients too, because firm owners actually listen to this. So it's like it's kind of a good unintended consequence per se. So more candidates, more clients. And I just realized that I have had a lot of fun. I look forward to all my podcast guests. I was a little nervous about sort of the getting people scheduled and things, but I love talking to people. And I even joke with kids, it's like, I wish I could get it set up where maybe it's like a John Lee Dumas thing, or it's like, that's all I do is just interview people on a podcast. I mean, that might get a little boring for me. I probably need some other things, but I really just love talk. We keep the episodes really short. So a lot of people go hour. Kitsis sometimes goes an hour and a half. We're in the 20 to 30 minute range.
Yeah. Oh, boy, there's so much I love about what you've said already. And the first is that you called it a big blue ocean, but some might say, well, geez, that's a niche inside a niche. We're not just talking about for financial planners. We're talking about for new financial planners and the recruiting career development side of that. So I love how you weren't dissuaded, but it's like, oh, there's already stuff for financial planners. I'm just going to step away. But no, you dug deeper and you said, oh, there's a wide open space that's not being served there. And I think that's really clever, and that your intention in starting the podcast wasn't, let's go convert listeners into clients, but rather let's build the pipeline of listeners who will become candidates that we offer to clients, which I think is brilliant, if I may, because the kind of person who's going to listen to this podcast is pretty motivated, committed, interested in learning, and like all kinds of good things you want in an employee are kind of like self-selected for the mere fact that they have chosen to listen to your podcast. And then because they're listening to your podcast, they know cool stuff and their skills are up-leveled. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And let me just, this may be helpful too. I mean, if anybody's out there that's like, hey, I'm on the fence. I mean, when I look back at it, I think really my biggest fear was just putting myself out there. And I just didn't really want to do that. I'm an introvert by nature, and people probably wouldn't think that because they can't get me to shut up about this stuff, but I'm passionate about it. So, and now we have a way to highlight some of the candidates that we placed, some of our client firms, and it just helps that new professional. And it's the podcast that I wish I had when I was starting as a new financial planner. And like I said, most of the content is out there for the experienced person, the business owner that's trying to sell or trying to grow or leverage. And there just wasn't much on this. One of my goals was never to have 1 billion downloads and all that, because to your point, it is a niche. I mean, it's a niche podcast. I mean, but the people that are listening, to your point, are the people that we're trying to reach, and it's worked out for us.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's so cool. And so you had some surprise bonuses of getting extra clients along the way as well. That's lovely. Well, so then tell us, when you were considering a podcast versus other alternatives, were there other contenders, or you're thinking podcasting is the way to go? You said, what's the next big thing? I don't know. You landed on podcast instead of, I don't know, Snapchat or Threads or any number of TikTok.
And I'm a front end millennial, so a lot of that stuff just is not my language. Now, some of our candidates are certainly on those platforms, but here's the marketing plan that I came up with. So something out there in written format, okay, so a newsletter or whatever, something out there on an audio situation, which is the podcast, and then something out there on a video. So we have a YouTube where we started the YouTube channel very closely to when we started the podcast. And so we're developing a library of just 3 to 5 minute short videos on how to interview and how to answer questions and how to explain stuff, or, what kind of resume you need to have, and just all these little things where people can, just go on there and really prepare. So when they have an interview, they can nail it.
Perfect. Well, there's a certain elegance and simplicity to that in terms of these are different media in which a person might consume information. So away you go. All right. Well, then can you walk us through when it says you were thinking, okay, let's do a podcast. What was your next step and how'd you proceed?
So luckily I've surrounded myself with good business people, and some of them are partners, like I mentioned, Michael Kitsis, and just other mentors. So I just reached out to them and said, I'm thinking about starting a podcast. Like, I don't know anything about this. How do I? And Kitsis actually has a article on this on his kitsis.com blog. So I looked at that, and then just trying to find a vendor and resources, because one, I didn't really know what that meant and what it all entailed and sort of the legwork behind it. But I knew I wasn't a professional, technology and production person. So I just reached out to them, and they gave me, your resource, and sort of got plugged in with you guys, and have really been using you ever since. So that was 2020. So I think we're coming up on 4 years now.
Oh, beautiful. Well, thank you. And we're delighted to have you, and really appreciate it. I'm curious if you can recall back in time, were there some other contenders? Do we have to fight out any competition, or it's just like Kitsis and company said, hey, their casual podcasting's good. It's like, okay, that's that.
I think I did look at one other company, but I got some feedback from somebody that just said it wasn't a good fit. They were always missing deadlines, and the work was kind of sloppy, and that's not the standard that I hold myself to and that my clients expect. So we wanted something that was going to be really tight, professional. And it was, Ben, the prior owners who we were working with, and I loved how you had to kind of pay a fee up front to go through a process, and they would lay everything out and kind of talk to you about things, versus just like, okay, let's just jump right into it and talk about production. But the marketing piece, there was just it's a very similar approach that I take when I do financial planning for clients, and also when I do recruiting. Client doesn't just call me up like, here's a job description. I'm like, okay, great, we'll start sending you candidates. No, that's not what we do. There's a consultative, collaborative, and I liked how you had the process, and so that's why we ended up going with you guys.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Well, that process is alive and well. We still do it. It's funny. So I've launched my own podcast, How to Be Awesome at Your Job, myself, and went through some similar kerfuffles with regard to, it's like, oops, this person, I think it was about 6-ish editors that didn't quite work out before landing on something that's like, oh, this is good. And we were getting in this groove for a long, long time, until we just sort of brought it in-house, and that's who the team is supporting me now at Cashflow Podcasting, as well as other shows. But yes, that same process is alive and well, and it's so funny because, so the second time I've launched a podcast here, the Cashflow Podcasting podcast, I was the client, if you will, working through this process. Like, this is so much easier and more pleasant than when I was furiously trying to figure out all this stuff myself. This is almost like an elegant, luxurious experience. Like I'm flying first class or something, like instead of just, crafting my own aircraft. Weird metaphor, but yeah.
Had I not had a good partner, I probably would have bailed on it, just because I thought, as things pick back up, I was probably like, okay, it's too much time and I don't want to mess with this. But I also have someone internally on my team that, can help interact with the cash flow team. And it's worked pretty seamlessly. I mean, from my standpoint, I just record the episodes, upload the audio file and the intro, and everything else is kind of done for us. So I like that.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Yeah. It's a nice experience on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm curious, did you encounter any, challenges or surprises, I guess good or bad, in your early days of the podcast journey? Like, oh, wow, I never expected that to happen.
Frankly, I didn't know what to expect. We put it out there, and I thought we might get a, couple dozen listeners, and like, hey, we know Caleb or whatever. But I mean, just the response that we got, like, hey, and people I don't even know, I've never even heard of, and some people that aren't even in the industry, like, hey, love the podcast, appreciate it. And again, firm owners, people that the content is not geared towards firm owners. It's geared towards but I have firm owners and employers and supervisors reaching out saying, man, we love this. This is great. And so I'm kind of like scratching my head, I think in a good way, like, okay, well, maybe I struck a nerve here. And we have for those that aren't familiar with our profession, financial planning, we have a really big talent shortage and problem. Everybody is kind of at the end of their career at life spectrum, but the demand continues to increase for financial planning services, just as more American, the wealth increases and, people retire, and we're just not there yet. So having a resource like this to help is just good for everybody, can help the employer and also the employee.
That really is beautiful to help contribute to solving, I guess, a global industry-wide systemic problem. Like, but people could encounter your podcast and say, huh, maybe I should become a financial planner. All right. That's that. And then at the same time, just that goodwill and trust and relationship building goodness that happens on the firm side. It's like, man, boy, Caleb and the new planner folks are just really doing a lot of our work for us with regard to getting these new hires up to speed. Well, shucks, if we need some help doing some recruiting, you're going to be very top of mind in terms of, and then have even a little tug of reciprocity. Like, oh man, Caleb really hooked us up. I kind of feel like I should throw him a bone if I can. At least that's how I feel internally as I think about the giving and taking of business.
Well, I mean, good point. I'm in front of these people every Friday. We release a new show.
Yeah.
And even if they don't listen to the episode, we have the social media stuff and we're pumping that out. So, and I tell the students all the time when I talk about entrepreneurship and financial planning or whatever it is when I'm traveling around the country, like, if I had to do all over again, I probably wouldn't set up a business where you have two pipelines to fill, because that's more complicated, more challenging, right? Versus just one. But it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and it is helpful for both. And the clients are getting a lot out of it. The candidates are getting a lot out of it, and we just want to keep putting content out there. So whenever there's a candidate, a job seeker who's like, look, I'm thinking about changing careers, or I'm thinking about making a move, or, hey, I'm thinking about reaching out, or somewhere I'm already in the business, I'm going to reach out to them. And like what you said on the firm owner side, hey, we're thinking about hiring someone. We've always done it ourselves, or, hey, we're in a bind. Like, we want to reach out to these guys. So I always want to be top of mind. And a little bit selfishly, there's a lot of people that are going to get stuff out of this that I'm never even going to know. Like, I want that person who just like, I'm done with teaching. I'm done with being an accountant. I'm, just got out of the military. I want them to hear some of our episodes and have confidence. Like, if someone else did it, I can do it too.
Yeah.
All right. I've heard all these bad things about financial planning and the sales, and 90% of people don't make it. Like, no. Listen to the New Planner podcast and hear all the success stories. Now, it's not all just roses and flowers. I mean, there's ups and downs, and people like left the industry and came back. I mean, but I want that to hopefully attract more people to grow our profession. Even if I wanted to, I can't help everybody, that reaches out to me. And that's what motivates me in just continuing to rock and go forward with this, because I may not ever talk to those people on the phone. I may never interview them and tell them the story about why the financial planning profession is a great choice for them. But if they hear one of these episodes, or it gets forwarded, and maybe they never even listen to another episode, they change their career, and that's one more certified financial planner we have in the profession, I'm good with that.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Okay, well, so you shared some of the cool benefits and results that have unfolded for you with this podcast. I'm curious, do you have a sense of any particular metrics or data or before after that you could point to?
Other than anecdotally, I mean, the way I look at this is the cost benefit. So what am I paying?
Yeah.
And then do I get, I mean, and it's sort of, that's just the financial side. But like, I mean, I just was at a conference and had all these people like, hey, we know you are, you have the podcast. Like, I don't even know these people. I mean, and that's created other opportunities that I don't even realize. So as long as I feel like I'm getting whether I get any placements or any clients or any candidates out of it or not, I mean, we are. And I mean, really, I just have to get like one or two people placed from the podcast to cover the cost of it. So the bar is pretty low. That's the way I think about it. So that's maybe probably not what you're looking for. You maybe wanted something more granular, but that's the way I look at it.
Well, no, I think that's handy. So you understand, okay, we got to get one or two placements will provide the revenue that takes care of the costs. And then there's all these other benefits in terms of relationships and opportunities that are hard to quantify and fun. And so there's a lot of that going on. So, I mean, are you getting those one or two a year?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, we should be doing a better job of tracking this, but I can go back and look in the database and say, where did this person come from? And, where did we get this? I mean, because we get a lot of candidates from doing the podcast, right? Because they hear us, and one, they didn't know that we were out there, but two, they see how we've helped some of these other candidates. They're like, look, I want them to help me with that too. So that's why we're in a good spot right now.
Okay, sure. Well, so I'm not going to put you on the spot to do some intense data analysis, research, tagging. But if you could best guess, throw a percentage of, what percent of clients probably wouldn't exist without a podcast?
I would say we probably have gotten an increase in maybe 10 to 20% of our new clients have come probably because they've heard this, or I'm just constantly in front of them, or they saw LinkedIn posting with, again, some of these people may never even listen to the episode because you look at the title and it's like, transitioning out of college into your first associate planner role. Well, if you're a firm owner, you're probably not going to listen to that. Yeah. But you see our stuff and you're like, oh, okay, well, we're looking at hiring someone kind of newer. Maybe we should reach out to these guys. That's what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really cool on the client side. But then I'm thinking about on the supply side in terms of, I imagine you have a very unique, distinctive, competitively advantageous relationship with a limited supply of candidates. And so I imagine there are other folks who wish they could be in your position to have so many engaged, qualified people with their content info who are interested in positions, and you got them.
They do come to us, and you're probably going down like what? I mean, we probably get it like the pre-podcast year before. I mean, we probably had like a 25-30% increase in just people coming in just from a channel that we didn't even have before. So, I mean, we get a lot of unsolicited resumes, but now it's, hey, I've been listening to you. Yeah. And in the recruiting business, I mean, and unfortunately, this is the way it works. Like the more experienced the candidate, the higher they are, the more value they can provide, the higher they're paid, like the higher the fee is for us. So I have some people that are like, hey, I've been listening 4 years and I'm ready to make a move. And you're the only guy I trust. That's a good spot to be in.
Yeah. That's awesome. Cool. Well, tell me, have you gotten any particular feedback? You said you have those moments where you go to conferences and they know you or they listen to the podcast. Have you ever had a stranger say something mind-blowing to you as a result of of this podcast being out there?
Yeah, it happened several times, but recently, hey, Caleb, I started listening to your podcast as a sophomore or freshman in college. I'm listening in my dorm room. I reached out to you after I graduated. You got me a placement and I've been there for 3 years. And when I saw that email and you invited me to come on the show, it was one of the highlights of my career. Beautiful. And then I had that. I mean, that's like a full circle, right? The person heard me, got in place because they heard me. And now we're having them on because they had all this success and they're doing great things just a couple, 3 years into they're going to go on and do a lot, great, awesome things, but just their short career. That is really, really motivating and very rewarding for me just to see kind of that full circle happen.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, any fun ideas toward the future with regard to projects or goals you or schemes you're cooking up that you think the podcast could support in some way?
Not sure. I mean, I'm kind of a find us something that works and sort of stick with it
Yep.
guy. I mean, a lot of your clients are like, let's just fire, 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 and then aim ready later. That's not my style, but I try to brainstorm and get a little creative on some of the guests and see sort of what we're doing. And, I love doing the compensation, the special episodes with Jesse Lineberry, one of my
Oh
colleagues,
yeah,
and
that
some
was
other
fun.
things. So we change it up a little bit, and I'm always open to other suggestions and other ideas. But right now, I mean, we've got a formula that works, and until I start getting negative feedback or losing listeners or subscribers, which hasn't happened, I'm probably not going to push too hard on just trying to come up with something different.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense to me. Well, and as you reflect on nearly 4 years here working with cash flow podcasting, what has been the experience of working us been? What's that been like? You could be honest.
Yeah, I mean it is pretty seamless. I mean it really is, and the everything is just it's just like clockwork. I mean it just here's what to expect. There was a couple times early on where I gave some feedback like, "Hey, I'd really like to see this." Caleb, thanks for voicing those concerns and just didn't get defensive, didn't try to push back. Like, yep, we're going to do that. The next time they did it, like, hey, was this better? I mean, like that's the type of stuff that I'm looking for. And then always just trying to bring ideas and hey, if you need to just being available, you want to brainstorm and you guys have a lot of resources too that I probably don't take advantage of. Kind of like in the terms of like how do you grow your podcast, how do you make money from it, and how do you get I don't. That's not my goal. I don't use a lot of that stuff, but I think you have some of those things. My goal was never to try to get ads and to do all this other stuff. It was just like I said earlier, try to grow the profession and grow new plan of recruiting, and it's done both of those.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Well, we're thrilled to hear it. Well, reflecting back, is there anything you wish you would have done differently?
Yeah, it's kind of like what everybody says. Like, I wish I would have planted that oak tree 30 years ago, not
Okay.
today. So I probably would have started. I mean, look, I don't know. Even before code, I don't know if I would have had the bandwidth because there is a barrier. I know you guys have content and some other people out there, the other providers. Like, it's actually not that hard to start this, and doesn't take a lot of time if you found the right partner. I mean, I just scheduled the interviews. I talked to people. Like I said, upload. I probably would have started the podcasting earlier, kind of when it was like kind of a new thing, fresh thing. Everybody was sort of getting into it. But, I don't know that I would have had the time to do it. I think I would have been hung up with like, well, I'm too busy and I don't have, this is worthless and I don't need this. And so I'm a big believer in everything falls into place for a reason and it happens when it should happen. And as I look back on this, it certainly did.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you have any top tips for folks who are business owners thinking about possibly launching their own podcasts?
Everybody that asked me that, at least over the last 4 years. Now, before this, I probably would have said something different, but I tell them to do it. Especially these financial plan. It doesn't matter what business they're in. I mean, there might even if there's already some content out there. I mean, you just think of like the talk radio. If anybody ever listened to like, you have all these people, and it's like they're all kind of saying the same thing, but you can find your space and your voice and come in there, and even with a super hyper niche like mine, if I can make it happen, you can. Not like if you're trying to get 1 million, 2 million downloads an episode, it's like Kevin O'Leary on Shark Tank is like, no, I'm never going to invest in anything unless you can offer it to the whole world, the product you can offer the whole world. That's not how we're set up. All right. So it
Yeah.
also depends on your goals. And that was never my goal to reach the whole world, but the people that want to change careers into financial planning or the people that may be struggling at firms or the people who want to make a move, they're finding us.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. And I think it's much easier. It is much easier to do a great job serving a niche well, one, it's easier to do a good job doing that because you understand them and what their wants and needs are, and you can deliver it. And two, it's easier to do a good job to profit from such a thing because, boy, if you're, I don't know, if you're true, we don't have these clients. Like if you're true crime, comedy, it's like, well, there's a lot of true crime and comedy out there, so you better be really, really funny to capture an audience, and then your monetization is somewhat limited.
Right.
You won't be selling hefty recruiting packages. You're providing ads for meal kits or something for those consumers. So yeah, I'm right with you there in terms of the riches are often, in fact, in the niches, as they've said. Well, Caleb, this is so fun. Tell me, anything else you want to make sure to mention before we part ways here?
No, I don't think so. Other than just look, if you're a business owner, your marketing channels, you need to pay attention to them. I mean, maybe you do it differently or have a different philosophy, but just constantly just flooding content out there that's helpful and applicable. I mean, some of it can be repurposed, but just constantly putting things out there and staying top of mind because we have so much stuff scrolling through where you could have a great conversation and send a great piece to somebody, and then a month later when they have they completely forgot it. Not because you were a bad marketer, because you have a bad, it was a bad pitch or whatever it was, but they just lost track and lost you in the shuffle. And that's something that you need to be aware of and you can battle against with something like a podcast.
Mm-hmm. Well, Caleb, thank you for being a valued special client with us for nearly 4 years. We really appreciate you and your business and for taking some extra time, which you totally didn't have to do, here to share your story on the show. I am uber grateful, and I just wish you and New Planner Recruiting lots of success, prosperity, and fun in the years to come here.
Thanks, Pete.
Thanks for joining me today. If you're ready to start your podcasting journey to grow your thought leadership and boost your revenue, schedule a call with us at cashflowpodcasting.com/chat. Don't wait to take your business to the next level. I'm Pete Makaitis, and until next time.